Bienvenidex to
Merendiando!
This week we are speaking with local comedian and queen Nelu Handa.
Nelu is a comedian, actor, writer, and producer based in Toronto. She's written and performed on a bunch of hit Canadian television shows like The Baroness von Sketch Show, The Beaverton, Working Moms, and Jam.
In 2015, Nelu created Das Queen, a groundbreaking monthly night of comedy that showcases women of color. It is the first Thursday of every month, and you can even watch it on Zoom during these isolation times.
We talked about Nelu's journey of getting into comedy, being politically correct while being funny, and making space for women of color in comedy. As always, before we get into this episode, we gotta check in about our meriendas or our snacks. So Monica, you recently had a birthday. Happy birthday. You probably ate a lot of sweet treats over the weekend.
Yes, because I decided to eat a lot of sweets, and we made a tres leches cake, which it was actually pretty good. But my friends also sent me some correctxs cookies, and I've been eating correctxs cookies every day.
Oh man, okay. If you don't know about correctxs cookies, they're an amazing Toronto-based bakery that specializes in delicious cookies, fancy cookies, and you can get them delivered anywhere in the city. So there's info about them in the show notes. They're a great gift to yourself or others, you know?
Before we get into this episode, we want to remind everybody that we've been recording all of our interviews over Zoom. And sometimes because of the internet and the pandemic and everything else going in the world, the audio quality is not the best. But the interview quality is amazing. So we recommend to listen to this episode with headphones. So go get a snack and let's dive in.
So we started off our conversation asking how Nelu is coping while sheltering in place, and she said she's actually been pretty busy. She's still working on a now virtual writing room for a TV show, and she's working on her monthly comedy show, Yes Queen, and taking lots of breaks for her eyes against the bright lights of the screen.
Nelu grew up in Brampton with a traditional Punjabi family. She went to business school, worked in marketing for a while, and after she got fired for one of her jobs, this prompted her to start a comedy career.
After I got let go from this company called Much Music, I started taking an improv class at Second City, Improv 101. I think that was like 10 years ago, and it just caught like fire for me. So I still worked in corporate until about 2014, and then I decided to take the leap and just try this thing that I'd always gravitated towards, and always kind of, when people talk about passion, I couldn't really think of one before I found this. So I feel very lucky that I've been able to kind of hit it at the right time. I feel like if I had started right out of high school, I'd be burned out pretty quickly because I don't think the world was ready for featuring more people of color. And now it just feels like the tides have completely shifted for the better.
I was reading in one of your interviews, and you said that even your presence is political, and I feel like you really use that, and it's just, I commend you for it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, so you work in comedy mostly, and I'm wondering, as you have now established yourself more in like the scene, the comedy scene here, how would you describe a Canadian sense of comedy or sense of humor? Is that even something you can say, like a Canadian sense of humor?
I feel like, I don't know. I think the Canadian sense of humor is evolving. I think we all grew up with a certain brand and a certain, voice that it comes from. I'm talking about white men. But now it's become much more diverse. And I think the thing, being a writer and kind of seeing it from the inside and understanding how writing works, it really is about your voice and finding your truth in it. So I think there is a big shift in a lot of comedy rooms and a lot of drama rooms probably to just be a bit more truthful about what the experience of being a human is. And I mean, that stuff is so loaded with comedy anyway.
I think part of the way that that's formed is what people, like other countries, recognize from us. Because I also have trouble wrapping my head around like the nation having one opinion, like this country of imaginary borders having one opinion, but it's more like what other countries expect of us, or like what our reputation is internationally.
We've seen that comedy has changed a lot. Like now there's things that you can't say because you shouldn't say them, right? But do you think that this means that some people think they can't express certain things, or now it's like this culture of like being afraid of trying new things because you might get canceled or people don't want to follow you?
I think that if you're being an asshole, you're being an asshole. And if you're hiding behind comedy to mask that, I think it's pretty easy for the right group of people to suss that out. I think there's still comedy that works for a lot of people that many marginalized people or other people would be offended by and insulted by and not feel safe with. So, I mean, people are free to express themselves however they want to express themselves. I just think that the appetite for things that seem ignorant or short-sighted or phobic in any way that oppresses any groups that don't need to be pushed down further, I think people are losing their appetite for that. And I think that's a good thing. And if you can't come up with a better joke than insulting somebody, you should probably rethink your comedy.
This part of the interview really surprised me. We asked her about being a visible minority in a comedy space, like when you may be the one visible person of color in a room or a femme-presenting person. And we asked Nelu if this had been her experience and how she managed it. So Nelu said that in the early days of her career, this was way more common for her, that she was in a space like that, and she wasn't sure if she was being hired just to fulfill a quota or for the quality of her work. But now, she's way more confident that she's being hired based on her skills. She says she wouldn't continue to be hired if she wasn't good, and the rooms that she's in are actually beginning to change and diversify a lot more.
I think, being the only voice of color is such a weird thing because there is no one narrative about what I could ever say, and I can't speak for 8 billion people. So I think just bringing my own perspective of lived experience and just what my brain and my heart feel about certain topics, I think that's important. I don't write into scripts characters who have no other descriptions of who they are, and just being preferably a person of color, just because some of these parts are more elevated. And I think that there's a lot of actors out there who have been cast as the help a bit too much, and I think that they should be given opportunities to do more than that. So yeah, I do advocate for it in all the ways that I can.
Do you ever feel a little bit of a pressure or excitement about seeing the generations to come of women of color looking at you?
It's weird to be a person and then other people be like, oh, I want to be that person, but then on the day-to-day I know what my life is, and I know how my brain works. I know that as I'm just normal. I'm happy if people find what I do inspiring, and if I can help people, then I always will. But it is a very individual pursuit, this thing. You have to be very motivated by yourself to do it, and then it takes a million people to help you out as well, and the opportunities that you get. So
turning pain into laughs, that's magic.
Well, that's what we all do, I think.
Yes.
I think people always look for humor in lightening up a situation, That's why political satire works. Maybe not so much now because everything feels like satire, but just shining the lens on the fallacy that we're being sold. And sorting through this common human experience to be more just shining a light on the bullshit. I think that's such an important thing, and whatever form that comes in, whether it's educating yourself a lot or just deferring to humor to kind of understand things, I think that's a very important channel to have.
We asked Nelu about how Jazz Queen started, and we went back to 2015 after she finished the diversity program at Second City. After finishing the show, they wanted to remount it somewhere, and Bad Dog Theater was a place that later became the home of Jazz Queen.
I went to Bad Dog and rented 3 nights there, and I worked with Julie Dumais Osborne, who is the artistic director at Bad Dog, who now is the artistic director at Second City. But Julie is one of these game changer people. So after we did our run there, she asked me if there was anything else that I wanted to do. And that idea of Yas Queen was birthed out of that diversity program, because I was working with this group of incredibly funny women of color who I hadn't really worked with before. Some of them I had just met through this program. And I just kind of felt the temperature was starting to shift, and it felt like it was a good time to start up a show like that. Like, I think at that time there was Sabrina Douglas had a show called Things Black Girls Say, and I think that was kind of the only diverse show that was on the scene at that time. I might be wrong. There might have been a couple others. Oh, there was the Nubian show always, which is such a it's such an established legendary show. But I wanted to help women. So I just made Yas Queen and had a bunch of my buds on it, and it was like a variety show of like improv and stand-up, and I think we had sketch as well in that first one, and just tested it out, and it felt good to do it, and I just kept going with it. Julie had created an opportunity to do it as a recurring monthly show, so I just went with it, and then it was like, I felt like I had just like opened my eyes, and it had been already 4 years, and I can't believe that it's been happening for this long, that I've stuck with something for this long. But I'm glad. I'm glad it's been happening, and I'm happy that people have found a nice safe space with it.
That's amazing. Like, producing a live show in Toronto for 5 years is seriously, you deserve an award. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Monthly show.
It's the producing part. It kind of like, I was very much interested in that actually, because I came from a business background, and that those muscles are very developed in me. So I found that to be actually very fun to do, and I still find it to be fun. Now, thank God, I have a team, Neha, Cody, and Neda Sarshar, that help me out with everything, and I love them so much, and all of our names start with NE, and we love that. But it's great to have this like a support, and to have their enthusiasm about everything, and they're just so good and on top of everything, and I adore them.
Amazing. Like, over the past 5 years, I guess, have you seen a change in what audiences are looking for, or what have you seen of that?
I think it always hits when the performers are talking about a personal situation that is like, it seems like culturally very specific, but you know, it's just such a laugh when you realize that it's such a universal thing. So I think people really love that, like hearing something that comes from a completely different background, but it's just such a relatable thing. That's why comedy works, I think, is because you find that nugget of truth in the bullshit of it all. And people can laugh about that, which is great. I think the audience has just like been evolving. Like there's you know, we have a big queer following, which is wonderful. We have people of different backgrounds. We have, you know, the white guys that want to go in the front row. God bless you. We have people in the industry, people who've never seen like a stand-up show with women of color before, and they have their minds blown. Like I think it's great that our audience is always changing, and we do have a core audience of people who just are welcoming of this new selection. You know what I mean? And
can you tell us like one of your favorite anecdotes of Jazz Queen?
I'll talk about you, Monica. I went to Comedy Bar, and there was this student show happening, and on stage for like maybe 2 minutes was this woman from Mexico who I thought was so funny and made me laugh and howl, and just stood out so much against what was happening on stage. And I hunted her down and asked her to do stand-up at Yas Queen, and she did, and she slayed. And I was like so pleasantly surprised, but I also knew that it was coming because Monica is such a great comedic presence and such a vibrant presence that I knew that you could pull off anything with your smart brain and your bullshit mouth. It's great. And yeah, I think you're such a wonderful find, and I think you're doing such good things and for the community.
That was my first time ever doing stand-up ever. And it was out of like,
No way.
yeah, it was because I was kind of new to comedy. You know how when you are maybe younger and you do funny things, but you're not thinking, oh, this is a career for me, you know?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So for me, it was like I never thought about comedy as a thing that I wanted to follow until I moved to Toronto, and I did it mostly because I had fun. And then Jasmine was the first show where I did stand up that I was like, wait a second, this is something I actually enjoy. And I'm just telling stories about me and Jesus, as I often do. And people enjoy them.
Yeah, it really hits. Yeah, it's great. I think that opportunity for me at Yasmin has always been my favorite. When people perform for the first time on that show, just seeing that kind of like world open up to them, and I'm happy to give people an opportunity to do comedy in a space that feels safer than the open kind of shark pit that the open mic nights kind of feel like, or it's hard for people to get in with producers and bookers. So I'm happy to give them a little bit of confidence so that they can go out to the bigger world and see other opportunities that they can get if it helps them in any way.
It's an ecology. So having a doors open at different levels of different audiences, that's like really important. And I feel like Yes Queen has become a really well-known door at like a level that's very accessible for lots of people.
I'm glad that it's become that. It really has been its own like organic thing that's grown. And I don't know. I love what it does, but I don't. This sounds weird, but I don't think it's mine. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it lives as something outside of like anything that I could be like, oh, this is my thing. Like it's definitely not my thing. That it doesn't happen without like everybody. So it feels like I love that it's this connector for people and something that they can feel like they're a part of.
Yes Queen has now moved to Zoom. Everyone was moving online, so they thought, why not our show? And it's actually been a great experience so far.
It worked really well. Everyone had like a different comedic like style, obviously, because we're all so different. But it all kind of lent itself really well. Everyone was doing a really good job. All the jokes landed, and it was kind of fun to have the chat happening at the same time. People were just like commenting and just laughing out loud at certain moments and things like that. So that was great. It was great to see that kind of connection, and people really enjoyed it actually, which I'm happy.
So, what is your favorite pandemic snack?
My favorite pandemic snack, you know what I like? I really like oranges. There's something about an orange because it's just citrus and it's like fresh and it's like tasty and it's like not what the world feels like right now. It's the simplicity of it that I feel quite grateful for, actually.
No, that's so real. And on top of everything else, you're getting a big shot of vitamin C, so you've got like all the bases covered.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, just give a shout out to your own show.
Yes Queen is tomorrow night, May 7th at 8 p.m. And we've got like a really great lineup. Monica will be performing with the Queendom, so that'll be fun. And then, we've got like Carol Zockley and Hoda Hersey and Noor Hadidi and Heather McDonald and Seema Saperi to bring some musical tunes. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. And we'll be posting our link on social. So just follow us at Yes Queen Comedy.
Thank you so much for coming to our podcast. Well, for not coming because you're at your house. Thank you so much for connecting to do the podcast with us.
This podcast is recorded in Toronto, or Dagarondo, the territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the Wendat Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and nations recorded and unrecorded.
We are deeply thankful to these nations for stewarding the land so that we might live in peace and respect for each other. As it is outlined in the Dish with One Spoon, One Pup, that all people who live here, settlers, indigenous folks, and others, must adhere to. Radio Aluna Teatro is produced by Aluna Theatre with the support from the Metcalf Foundation, the Laidlaw Foundation, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Toronto Arts Council.
Aluna Theatre is Beatriz Pizano and Trevor Schwellnus, with Sue Balint and Gia Namens. Radio Aluna Theatre is produced by Camila Diaz Varela and Mónica Garrido.
For more about Aluna Theatre, visit us at alunatheatre.ca, follow at Aluna Theatre on Twitter or Instagram, or like us on Facebook.
Follow and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Miigwech and Yawangoa.